drawing down of foreign aid from the United States to Israel be compensated by the proposal to have a merging of some sort between our Pentagon and your military?
Yeah, I'm calling it from aid to partnership. So we take away the money that is given to Israel, which is one part, but the other part is we co-invest in equal measures in the new technologies that are needed to give our military and your military the advantage. So there are some unbelievable projects. So we invest jointly and take the fruits equally. You move from aid to partnership, and I think that represents what Israel is. And remember, the other thing is that we share with America unbelievable intelligence to save American life. General Keegan has said that when he was working in American intelligence, what Israel was giving the United States was worth, he said, 5 CIAs. I'm not trying to be mathematically exact, but Israel's contributions to America's defense are important. Our technology is incredible. And since yours is incredible too, and you're the great champion of liberty and free markets, I think the meshing of our two great countries of talent would strengthen America's position, competitive position, both in the economic marketplace and in the military battlefield in many important ways. So that's the idea. The idea is to take away aid, one-sided aid, and move it into, bilateral investments for common benefit.
Sure, will that
Shalom, Yasha'Allah. First and foremost, I'd like to give all glory, honor, and infinite praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Chadash, and double honors to beloved elders and the apostles at Great Millstone that taught me this truth. Wa, peace and salutations to all you hopeful elect Akim out there laboring that are pushing this word in truth and in sincerity. I wanted to do this lesson, based on the update of what's going on with the most recent laws that are being passed without the majority of these Babylonians knowing what's going on. But I'll say that, but there is a mass majority of these regular Edomites that are actually starting to see the hidden hand and who's actually the leaders of this country. Those that you can't speak against. Like I said, this is a news update. I wanted to make this real quick, and straight to the point, and just kind of shine some light on what's going on, because there's still one more phase of the government, which is the Supreme Court and the presidential signing of the law, which is merging the small hats and the Babylonians together, which they have already been one let's say entity, but I just say that because of how much they work together, not that they're the same. So just to not confuse anybody, but this is Esau Edom, and what he has built here in Babylon the Great is the strong arm and the main military power of the little hats, known as the tribe of Amalek in the scriptures. Descendants of Agag, descendants of Alexander the Great, so-called the Alexander the Creep, which we know is an Amalekite, and they always say civilization began with the Greeks, but not to go off on topic, but you can see that the same key players are in position today. And I'll just say that, since I mentioned that, this is why evils are increasing. This is Second Esdras. This is not what I was thinking. I believe it's in Maccabees. Here we go. This is First Maccabees 1:9. And after his death talking about Alexander the Creep, they are his 4 generals that took power, all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. And that's the Ptolemies, that's Cassander, that's Lysimachus, and Cassander, Lysimachus, Epiphanes, and Ptolemy. So those are names that you got to be familiar with, to be able to, because, you could look it up really easily, but it just goes to show you that when these Edomites came into power, the evils increased. And that video that I showed you of Net and Not a Jew was out there pretty much saying that it's a merger of information that was already being exchanged. But now, we know that the U.S. government and the Little Hats use the same technology, Palantir. So they already have been working together, and a lot of these CIA agents, the main spies that they catch spying on American infrastructure were actually the Israelis themselves, and that even happened during the time when the movie Oppenheimer was going on. You had certain information get leaked to where the Russians ended up, and there was 2 spies, I can't remember their names exactly, that got caught with that information. They happened to just be little hats, with big noses, citizens of the 1948ers, let's just say that. And it came out a couple months later that now the Russians, or the Soviets at the time, where they were calling themselves, had nuclear missiles. Hence, then you had the Cold War start, because Amalek has always been in the cuts, causing division, and being the devil and deceiver that he is. So, with that being said, that's why we do these lessons, to just shine light on the information that's coming out and to filter it through the scriptures, which is what makes so much sense, and the only thing that makes sense when you see how much chaos is going on in the world. This is Ephesians 5:11, and have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them, and that's just correct them. And that's why we're just, again, shining a light. I'm shining the light on this, and chose this to be, the topic of my lesson. And if there's brothers that want to screenshot this picture right here, this actually goes into the article of what that is. And pretty much it's just telling you that it passed and that it has one more, phase of government to go through before the complete merger is complete. So I have a couple more. Ephesians 5:15. I just realized I'm on 3%. And I can't charge it because I'm using wired headphones. So, and the iPhones nowadays only have one jack. They don't have an audio jack and a earbud jack and a charger, So Salakia, but I'm just going to try to get through this lesson, without the video cutting through. This is Ephesians 5, and I'm going to jump down to 15. See then that ye walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. And as we're going to see what's going to lead on into the future, that the days and the evil days coming ahead are going to really get tough. Gas is going to increase. I've been looking at oil prices online, and you can see that if you see on the stock market, the graphs that they have, it's been shooting through the roof ever since the attacks have resumed in Iran. So just expect things to get more expensive, and this is just another, update on, what's going on in your government. This is the Congress passes 1.15 trillion NDAA that includes more integration between U.S. and Israel defense sectors, including less talked about provisions expanding intel sharing, that's Mossad and the CIA, and require the president to notify Congress before any rollback. So as you can see, they're going to have to go through certain modes of government before just going and acting crazy. But as you can see, this picture, hey man, it's very true, and it's going to actually anger a lot of patriots that have keeping their eye on the situation of what's been going on with this law as it progresses. And to note, every single Republican voted for this to pass, and every Democrat that didn't got their AIPAC funding stripped from them. So what does that tell you? And I'm going to leave you with a quote. I can't remember exactly who says it, but they always say, to know who controls you, know who you can't speak against. And expect a lot of false flags, expect in the news that there's going to be anti-Shem attacks, anti-Semitic attacks, etc. Just to try to make those little hats with big noses more victimized, in the world news. So expect the smear campaign of those that are going against their agendas to be amplified, because these patriots are about to figure out that red, white, and blue that they love so much is actually just blue and white, and the flags that you can see answers what I'm talking about, and what's flag really controls this country. So not too much rambling. Like I said, I just want to make this quick to the point, and shine some light on this. This is news, and this is prophecy. That this beast is verging like Moltron or Ultron, merging like Ultron. All the different parts of this wicked ass world are coming together, and they're getting ready for the big one when Yahweh Shai cracks those clouds. So Lord willing, that this lesson was edifying unto the elect. Till next time, I would like to give all glory, honor, and infinite praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachachodash, and double honors to beloved elders and the apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. While peace and salutations to all you hopeful elect out there laboring, that are pushing this word in truth and in sincerity. Till next time, Lord willing, Shalom.